Tell me what you think about the issues of the world. What kind of spice you wanna be? Tell me where you wanna travel. Do you believe in luxury? What's your hidden passion? What makes you so unique? Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Happy Wednesday. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole, a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And it is Wednesday, June 17th. And it's what I call What Women Want Wednesday. What Women Want Wednesday. So this is an opportunity for us to have an interactive conversation. However, with the topic and the guests tonight, I'm not sure if we're going to do a lot of that because I really want y'all to hear from them. But as we get started, if you will, please, in the comments, let us know what city and state you are viewing our broadcast from. What city and state you're viewing the broadcast from. If you just put your city and state in the comments, your name will automatically pop up. And I'll give you a shout out. So I want to thank you for joining us. We had a great live on Monday. It was 3 dynamic gentlemen. And we had just a great time just talking about some really pertinent issues for today. So as I see you all coming on, I see Dr. Janelle Robinson saying, hey, Nicole, excited about this conversation, and I am excited too. So again, for those of you who are just tuning in, it's What Women Want Wednesday, and my guests tonight are Miss Ghia Kelly and Dr. Kristal Moore Clemons, and we are going to tackle the topics of systemic racism. Again, this is What Women Want Wednesday. So from a woman's perspective, protecting Black women and the voice of Black women. So without further ado, help me welcome Miss Ghia.
Hello.
Hello. And Miss Kristal.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, 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 ladies. So I'm going to have you give a brief introduction of where you're from and what you do for the viewers. So Ghia, let's start with you.
Awesome. So I'm Ghia Kelly. I'm also based in Tallahassee, Florida, but originally from Miami, Florida. I'm a clinical social worker by trade, but also a faith leader. I'm an ordained elder. I also am a activist, social justice activist, as well as an advocate for violence against women, and have done that work for a number of years. So those are kind of the 3 areas that I'm very passionate about, and this conversation really aligns with that. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Kristal.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm actually based out of Petersburg, Florida, and I'm sorry, Petersburg. I was just having a conversation with Ghia how much I miss Florida, specifically Tallahassee. So I'm based out of Petersburg, Virginia, and I actually serve as assistant professor of educational leadership at Virginia State University. So for the past decade or so, I've been in academia, serving either in the departments of history, women's studies, education. And so that's my background. My research is focused on Black women teachers, Black women from the 1964 Mississippi Freedom Summer, where I did oral histories of Black women activists and connecting it to what we do today, and focus a lot on Black feminist theory and Black feminist ways of knowing, and really trying to look at historical understandings of Black women's lived experience as, models for us today to stay strong, to stay encouraged for all that we're up against.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So before we dive in, let me just give some acknowledgments to some of the folks that are on the live. We got Maria Mead, who's one of my Leadership Tallahassee classmates. She said, Tallahassee, Monday was great. Looking forward to the night. Welcome, Maria. We got Wendell Berry, who's one of our regulars. He's here right in Tallahassee, giving us greetings. Melissa Raspberry says, welcome. Looking forward to the discussion, especially hearing from my girl, Dr. Kristal Moore Clemons, dropping wisdom. Listening from Durham, North Carolina. So welcome, Melissa. Thank you for being on. Lots of folks here. So Talithia, she connected me with Ghia. So thank you. Ursula, she's here in Tallahassee. Thank you for being on, Ursula. Raquel is on. Thank you, Raquel. Gerald, my business partner, friend, and brother, he is on here too from Tallahassee. Bianca Lowry said, yes, Ghia Kelly. All right, so a lot of support, a lot of love here tonight. Melissa said, thank you for having us. And Cara Palmer Smith, my LT classmate and friend. Good evening. Hello, sorry, Dr. Kristal. Looking forward to the conversation. Hopefully my phone doesn't die. Hopefully it does not, Cara. And then my sister Latanya Smith out of the Atlanta area. So, all right. And then here's D, my former ACDT dance cohort. She said, Dr. Moore Clemons is one of my favorite professors at FAMU. So
thank you.
Yes. And Johnny. All right. So, all right. Enough shouts out. So let's get going. Because look, we could be here all night shouting out. So systemic racism. I like to start out with a definition. You know, I think oftentimes prejudice, bias, discrimination are used interchangeably for racism, and racism is really maybe not what's meant, or maybe it is what's meant. But I like to start off with a definition so that we can all kind of be on one accord. So when we talk about racism, we're talking about denying access based on race, denying access to healthcare, to housing, to education, you know, having the power to deny someone access based on their race. So can we all agree on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, you know, that's been the hot topic, you know, since, well, for us, it's been a topic for, you know, ever since we got here, right? Because these systems that have been created in American society really have not been for Black and brown people. And, you know, as a result of what's happened with the death of George Floyd and, you know, just a whole host of other Black people here in America. But George Floyd, for some reason, it has really sounded the alarm.
Yeah.
Not just here in America, but across the world. So, you know, I want to dive in. This is, you know, again, What Women Want Wednesday. We heard from the men on Monday about their thoughts on systemic racism and maybe their experience. So I want to hear from you on your experience, your thoughts about it, and how we can eradicate it, or how we can mitigate some of it if we can't totally eradicate it.
I'll just share something very quickly what we talked about, just to kind of get the conversation going. That was very interesting. I heard someone say that they felt that George Floyd was the Emmett Till of our day. And that was really, you know, I heard it and I was like, wow, you know, I can see how they would say that, because his death, and we've seen quite a few deaths, but it was something very different about that 8-minute video and seeing that happen. And so I think I am personally in a space where I think I wanted to think we were further along. Many of us, the trauma of this time, even though, you know, we know that race, you know, systemic racism has not gone anywhere. It's just taken on many different forms, and it's not as covert or overt, I'm sorry, as it, you know, as it was at one time. I think I had to face or grieve the loss of the, you know, of the idea that we were further along. And I think that's kind of where I am, is really in man, like we're still here, like we're going, I'm going back and looking at the 1960s and the activism and what they were fighting for, and we're still, it's kind of like, like we're still here, we're still in this place. So I'm in kind of these two spaces to where I'm excited about our fight, and I'm excited about, this generation, particularly the millennials rising up and really using their voice, women. But at the same time, it's like, man, like our ancestors fought for us to be further along than we are. And that's a tough pill to swallow. It really is. That we're still dealing with people, we can't even get to systemic racism until people acknowledge that there are differences. We can't even agree that there is a such thing as white privilege as a country. And I think it has a lot to do with our political climate, which is very interesting. And so we can't even really begin to really eradicate or really deal and dismantle the systemic racism until we can have conversations that are honest about the fact that Black and brown folks are not, treated in a way or the same way as white people, and that there is white skin privilege, that there is a difference in the way that Black children are educated versus white children of a higher social class or whatever. All these disparities. We have to first be able to come to an agreement on that, and I think that's the difficult part. And so having these conversations around the nation, in our local neighborhoods, in our jobs, it's so important to us being able to dismantle what's happening systemically. But we have to get to the place where we can even own it. Not us as people of color because we live it, but our white counterparts. We're still working on that.
Yeah, and it's that institutionalized piece that I think is challenging right now, because I had to think back. So when was the first time? Because it's interesting, you said that you've been reading about George Floyd as the kind of modern Emmett Till. But I remember living in Florida and having that story about Trayvon Martin.
Trayvon Martin, yeah.
And then I had to think back because I've been having trouble watching the videos, the trauma. And because I don't think much has changed ideologically as it pertains to whiteness, white privilege, and institutionalized racism. I think what it is we now have a medium in which it can be exacerbated at the drop of a dime through our smartphones or what have you. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine, and it's very voyeuristic to sit and watch these killings. But it's very reminiscent of when white supremacists and white segregationists would have family gatherings and send out lynching postcards, right?
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
And so as a student of history, you're thinking like, this is this modern day lynching postcard, if you will. All of these videos that we're resharing. And I had to think back, when was the first moment, like in my kind of adulthood, that I remembered someone getting killed brutally like this? And it was Amadou Diallo. That name stands out to me. I was getting ready to go to college, and it was a lot of literature on driving while Black, living while Black, walking while Black. And I remember the ACLU had these cards, and I had laminated it and put it in my wallet. So if I ever got pulled over, I would know what to say. For if I had an encounter with the police, or because I was fearful. And even though I grew up with a father in law enforcement, but the way in which they police, meaning white supremacists, it's not the ways in which I grew up being around police or law enforcement. That's not how my father policed. That's not how his partners did. In the sheriff's department. And so it's very different.
Yeah.
So I got a question, Kristal. You mentioned being a student of history. What role do you think history plays in what we're experiencing today, in terms of knowing what our ancestors, went through? And, I think when I think about the millennials, I think, all of this is so new for them, right? Because maybe they're not familiar with the some of the events that we were familiar with. Like when I grew up in Miami, in 1980, I was 10 years old, and there was a gentleman named Arthur McDuffie who was brutally beat by police, and there were riots in Miami as a result. And that's like my first experience of civil unrest based on, some racial disparities or inequalities or what have you. So, so when you get to like a Rodney King or, some of these other things that happen, it's like, okay, that was kind of my first introduction to it. But now to continue to see it as I'm growing up and becoming an adult, it's not so foreign to me.
Right.
So I don't know, like the youth that are out there today, how familiar they were with a Trayvon Martin, because maybe they were just in elementary school or,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So how important is history in all of this?
Oh, I think it's extremely important, primarily because it helps you navigate the current terrain, right? And I think it also allows you to kind of see the social political structure of the time, right? So the different leadership responses to state sanctioned violence that we're experiencing. And I think that's the pivotal moment that we're experiencing now, is that the leadership, I mean, we have tremendous Black leaders speaking out on our behalf, but as far as any allies that have, particularly from the top, and I mean the top, I'm saying the gentleman in the White House, because I can't say his name, it's not even a sense of empathy. And so that is setting the tone, it's giving a license for people to really pull out their racist ways. They had tucked away because as time goes on, it became taboo to do, right? As we kind of evolve throughout history. But now it's, I liken it to how, you couldn't walk around in your KKK outfit after a certain time period. Now it's almost as if people are getting comfortable with that kind of negativity and that kind of disregard for, Black human bodies. And then when we say we're experiencing trauma, when we say we're experiencing discomfort, it's a pushback. And that is what we've experienced throughout history, this constant having to legitimize and having to provide receipts, if you will, or having to have, primary sources just to show proof that we are being traumatized. And so that, for me, as a student of history, it just reminds me that although we hope and we feel that we are far along, we are not that far along. And that's actually quite sad and depressing to say out loud.
And go ahead, I'm sorry. And I was going to say, I think that is a huge element, is our leadership and the lack of empathy that makes this time feel so much, it's harder, because it's always been hard. But when you have someone that gets on television and like, no, we're doing great over here, and no, we don't care about that. And, I think it makes it even much harder, because you realize that this fight, we don't have support, from our, the commander, whatever, in chief, quote unquote. We just don't have it. And so that racist spirit, and I'm spiritual, so it's that racist spirit, because it's deeper than one individual, that evil spirit that has, been released, like she said, has always been here, but now it's like really bold. And I think that's the part that's the most egregious, is that people don't care, and it's not just a certain sect of people. You're talking about religious folks, that are like, now, like, their racism is showing, it's in every pocket of society. And that's what when I talked about the grief earlier, I think that's what it is, because some folks I just didn't expect, I'm like, I thought you were further along than that. And the truth of what's held on the inside, that people didn't feel comfortable enough saying it under Obama's administration. Now they're like, oh yeah, we got all the rights because we have a leader with no filter. We have a leader with no empathy. And so we don't have to have it. And it's really difficult. I think that makes it that much harder. And when I have a 9-year-old son, and when he sits and watches the news, and he's just so perplexed, he's like, how did he get it down? Help me understand, like what he really doesn't understand. I remember a couple years ago, I think when, 2 years ago, he was about 6 or 7. He was like, man, our president, he just needs a good spanking and a nap. He's so angry, he needs a spanking and a nap. And we laugh, but he sensed that, hey, something's not right. Like and even now he's getting angry because he's realizing that he's sensing the lack of empathy, and a 9-year-old can see that because he's like, why is he not doing anything? Why is he not saying anything about that man who was killed? Why is he not, he just doesn't understand, because the human response is to be empathetic. Even politicians who are racist have enough sense to at least act like they're not, but it's like,
it's difficult.
Wow. Yeah,
that's the privilege of it, though. That's the privilege, is that I can do that and still get support. But I can do that and still have people support me, right, wrong, and different, because of that supremacist mindset, because of my white skin. But I'm going to have people that I'm dead wrong, and they won't call me out. They will align with me. They will fund me, because I have a lot of privilege. I'm male, I'm rich, and I'm white. So I have all of that working for me.
Yeah.
Who gonna check me, boo?
Who gonna check?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of transition to solutions. So Ghia, you mentioned about having conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it. Are there any other solutions that you think we might explore to, tackle this institutional racism?
So I think institutional and systemic racism is multidimensional. And so it has to be addressed in various dimensions. And so conversations on a kind of interpersonal level, even in organizations, is a great way to start. But alongside that, there has to be a disruption. So the protesting and such is very important, and so we have to have that happening simultaneously. There has to be those that are empowered to have the ability, whatever that's that realm of influence, those people that are in those schools, those black and brown folks or white allies that have the power to change state policy, and whatever it is, they have to now begin to look through the lens of equity and begin to call out racism as well. So it's kind of all these things happening at one time. It's conversations with your families, it's conversations with your neighbors, it's committee meetings, it's community gatherings, it's protests, it's all of that happening together. I don't think there's one solution, because it's not one dimensional. It happens in so many levels. And so we have to have a number of things happening, but there has to be a disruption. We have to be able to shed light on the disparities. And for some people, that's through data. They have to see numbers in order to believe it. For other people, it's stories. It's hearing the stories and lived experiences of people. For other people, it's, again, interpersonal conversations and hearing from those, hearing what we're going through. It's hard to, again, identify just one thing. We have to do all these things simultaneously, depending on our level of influence and what we have, the control over. Some people, it's just their black sons, their white sons, their children, it just depends where you are situated.
No, so I agree that it's multifaceted. So yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Some, many different tools in our toolkit to help get us there. Yeah. Kristal, did you want to add anything?
Sure, I agree. I think we have to radically reimagine who we are as a Black collective. And I think that we need to do things like send our children to HBCUs. I think we need to do things like if the teacher is not committed to an anti-racist, not just multicultural, right?
Very different.
Because we were at multicultural, but we need an anti-racist, anti-biased curriculum. If your district and your school superintendent is not about using that language, I think we need to call them out. I like what I see happening in the private sector, in businesses where, you see a lot of corporations dismissing employees who are caught on camera being overtly racist. I mean, the person in San Francisco that lost their job, Amy Cooper, who lost her job, right?
You're going to learn today, Amy. I'm sorry.
Right. So I think corporations, I think we need to hold our people accountable that way. I think we need to circulate the Black dollar and find ways to build each other up. I think we need to do some coalition building in terms of other groups who are subordinated by white supremacy, and to come together to really fight on a policy level. There's a lot that we need to do to organize in that way. But I think for me, it's education. If the school is not going to treat us well, we need to leave, because we have plenty of schools that can do it for us. And we need to just hold our administrators and elected officials accountable in that sense. Because if those things don't change, my heart goes out to this generation, right? Because it's the age of standardized testing. It's the age of erasing as much culture from the curriculum as you possibly can, and saying that we're all the same, right? This whole notion of a melting pot. But then when they go out into the real world and they're jogging, they're killed. They fall asleep in their car, they're killed, right? And so we're receiving mixed messages.
Yeah.
And we need to change that.
Yes, we do. All right. So I want to transition on to protecting Black women. Most recently here in Tallahassee, there was the death of a young activist, Oluwatoyin Salu, whose body was identified and found, I believe, on Sunday or Monday this week. There was a vigil today at the Capitol in her honor. And she was very much so an advocate for Black lives and, speaking out about how Black lives matter. But I feel like Solu is one of many cases of Black women who, especially young Black women, who may be not protected by society, period. By family, by friends, by society, period. So I just wanted to kind of dive into protecting Black women and the importance of Black women being protected.
I think I'll start off with the famous quote by Malcolm X, that the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. And so that's, his words from 1963. And as we stated earlier, we haven't got much further in that. I believe that the Black woman is still very much a very vulnerable individual. I think some of us have lessened our vulnerability through education and other ways that we've, strengthened ourselves and empowered ourselves. But we still have to fight for our girls. We still have to fight for our women, because I don't believe we are seen in the way that we should. We're not seen, which, and again, it's, there was a video going on earlier, and I think some guy had tweeted that Black women will be protected when they learn how to submit to their men, or something. Yeah, that crap. And one of the guy responded, who's a comedian, and he talked about as a Black man, he said, look, and it was another Black man that was saying this on Twitter or whatever, and he said they have to be protected from us. Like, like it's don't, you're talking about submission, but look, we're this woman who we're talking about, this young woman who was killed by a Black man, if he's indeed the one who did it, right? And so he's like, we are the ones that's causing harm a lot of the time. And so it's not that we're protecting her from the white man, we're protecting men in general.
Right.
And then you got the systemic piece. So women, we already have those, I hate to say two stripes, because I really don't want to say that, but we are not only dealing with racial inequality, we also have gender inequality. And so we were talking a little earlier about intersectionality, and it's not just one fight. Now I have to fight both as a woman because I'm equally as woman as I am Black. And so neither one of there's no hierarchy in that part of my identity. And so I have to fight both of those wars, so I'm constantly calling out male privilege, and chauvinism, and I also have to call out racism. And so it's tiring. But I remember hearing a woman say in a racial equity training I was in, and she said, when the Black woman is free, we'll all be free. And that is true. That rings true because of what we just established, is that we have a lot of stuff that's coming at us. And when we can be free, everybody will be free. And so we have to fight for one another. I think we see that movement happen where Black women are trying to uplift because we need each other. We get each other. We understand the struggle, but we need Black men because, as the gentleman said, a lot of the times we're the one hurting them. We're the one that's not protecting. And so how do we get our Black men as well to see us as valuable and to fight for us in the way that we're fighting for them? And so that's just kind of where I start at.
Yeah, that intersectionality piece is key. I mean, if we don't understand, I'm a student of Black feminism. I'm a Black feminist all day. And I just think that if we don't understand, because Kimberly Crenshaw talks about how Black women have the highest homicide rate, but we just go unnoticed.
Yeah.
So, and think about how long it took for us to get media attention about Breonna Taylor, right? Mm-hmm. Think about how long it took for those dash cam videos to get released with Sandra Bland.
Yeah.
Right. And even there are still so many uncertainties with that case. And so we think about all of the trauma that Black women have had to experience, right? So not only are you experiencing it against your own Black woman body, right? Living it, but then you can also experiencing it as you are the mother, the auntie, the grandmother, right? The caretaker, the person grieving for all of those loved ones that you might have lost, right? Whether it be your child. I think about, imagining what Tamir Rice's mother is thinking, right?
Yeah.
Just thinking about all that. And I don't think we do enough to have the conversation about that interlocking system of oppression which is what, Black feminist theory, Patricia Hill Collins talks about. Just, because it's not just race, it's not just gender, it's your sexual orientation, it's your social class, and what's your ability level. It's all of that compounded into how I am experiencing the world, and then how other people treat me too, right? Whether it be in the workplace, whether it be in a relationship, even in friendships. I don't think people understand all of the back and forth and the negotiation that you have to do to stay safe as a Black woman, and then to keep those around you safe as well.
Yeah, it's exhausting sometimes. It is. It's exhausting because I believe that there is this misconception that Black women are always strong, or that we don't need to be protected,
right?
That we don't have vulnerabilities, that we are not soft, that we don't have, the things that break our hearts like everybody else. It's just, and I think that's a misconception. We're strong, yeah, we are, but we're also soft. We're also very much loving and caring and motherly and nurturing. So I believe we have to deal with the narrative about Black women.
Right.
That has to be changed, because I think that's why no one's looking. No one's trying to find, nobody's looking out for us the way, I won't say no, nobody is, because there are, but we need more protecting because we go under the radar so often because of that misconception.
So along with that, when I think about this, I think about human trafficking or sex trafficking. And, I have heard of, quite a few young Black women who just kind of go missing. You gotta wonder, have they been put into a sex trafficking ring or a human trafficking ring of some sort? And it just, like you're saying, it's almost as if we're invisible to some extent because it kind of is under the radar.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one of the purposes of the, Say Her Name movement, right? Is to bring visibility, because a lot of times our narratives are sidelined to either male narratives or just not deemed worthy of even being told, right? And I think about, just there's all kinds of research on how Black women are perceived, right? We think about Black women in terms of childbirth. There's research studies that show that doctors perceive us to have a higher threshold of pain just because of the nature, right, of that kind of stereotypical myth of strong Black woman, right?
Wow.
And so, for the folks who took an oath to do no harm, they kind of dismiss us in that realm, right? And even thinking about Black girls in schools and how teachers respond to Black girls.
Absolutely.
And how, one child can be deemed as, oh, she's speaking up, she's confident. But, if my daughter were to do that, oh, she's disrespectful. She's being too direct, right?
Yeah.
And all of that is just rooted in these stereotypes of how Black women have been seen and should be seen, right? And it's damaging. It's very damaging. And it's difficult to parent, and it's difficult to love in romantic relationships because you're constantly navigating between living your truth and debunking stereotypes, right? It's I don't think that people understand that, and how it has an emotional, right, a social emotional experience from that.
So I think you said we are balancing trying to live our truth. I think a lot of times with Black women, our truth gets put on the back burner, right? Because now we are someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's daughter or sister or cousin or niece or what have you. All of the roles that we are playing, someone's employee, someone's community organizer, someone's, all the various hats that we wear, right? And, we take it on, because that's just kind of who we are.
Yeah.
But, we had aspirations of going to law school or starting that business or, whatever it was. But a lot of times it just gets put on the back burner. And I know we kind of deviating a little bit, but I just think that it's important for, the purposes of this conversation for people to know that we sacrifice a lot.
Yeah.
We sacrifice a lot.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, that narrative again is important because alongside that, Black women are like, the number one, demographic for entrepreneurs, so as much as we are putting things on the back, we're also doing it, we're also balancing, being a mother or wife or whatever, we have in our hands to juggle, we're doing it. And so we're dealing with all of the oppression, but we're also rising up. And so we have to show forth that as well, that it's not just I'm doing everything because that's the truth for some people. But for some, no, I'm not. I'm no longer sacrificing my happiness for other people. I'm getting my therapy and healing my wounds so that I can be healthy. I want people to know that I'm dealing with, my need to be a savior. That savior, I'm dealing with that because that's been passed on, right? And that can be unhealthy. So also as Black women, there's also that emergence that's happening where we're really living our truth, living authentically, and pressing through kind of those glass ceilings, that have tried to, be that we can be everything. We can be everything we want to be. And so we're doing it, and I think we need to see more of that, and we need to encourage more of that. As much as we know that we carry the weight of the world.
Yeah.
I definitely think we are doing it. I just think sometimes at what expense, right? And that's the challenging part for me. I mean, I know within my own life, just being in certain situations where you've had to fight to not be seen as a stereotype.
Yeah.
You're fighting twice as hard just to have the same benefits as your white counterpart, right?
Yeah.
And so that is becoming exhausting. So for me, I think learning to protect my peace. I've been following a lot of, I can't remember the sister's name, but on Instagram, she has the NAP ministry, kind of getting out of this notion of always grinding to prove my worthiness, right? And to prove that I belong. Because I've paid my dues. I mean, shoot, I wrote a dissertation. I birthed 2 children. I've worked at predominantly white institutions. I mean, I've experienced.
You need a nap.
I have reserved the right to protect my peace and rest and not feel strapped by the stereotype that if I don't work this hard, they're going to perceive me as lazy. But it takes a lot of mental work. Like you said, therapy. It takes a lot to get your mind around that so that you're at peace with it. And I think more sisters are kind of coming to that point of view at this current moment, because I mean, I've had a lot of different friends reach out to me, is everything okay? What can I do? But it's not our space or our place to inform the allies on how to not be racist, right?
Yeah.
I've done the work. I've read it. I can share the literature, but also they need to take the initiative to research it, because just as I had to unlearn trauma and unlearn not falling into these stereotypes and unlearn all the negativity associated with, the myth of the strong Black woman, etc. They can do that work in unlearning their white supremacist ways and fight the systemic racism, right? Fight the systemic gender discrimination. I mean, I had a dean say, first maternity leave, now telecommuting, because I wanted to telecommute, which was a right at my former institution. And I had a white counterpart who never lived in Tallahassee. She taught from Tampa. And so I was simply asking for that same accommodation. Oh, it blew up. But it was because, how dare you, Black girl, right? Not even Black woman in her eyes, but how dare you, Black girl, think that you are eligible for that kind of accommodation. And so I think our allies need to step up, because these are those, microaggressions is what we're dealing with. And if we don't start naming it, and if we don't start calling it out in a way that's really productive, it won't change.
Yeah.
And so while we're doing that, we also have to protect our peace. And it's exhausting.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share just a couple of comments. This one by Maricela I thought was good. We have to be more transparent about our feelings. I think is what we are just saying. Let's see. We talked about Black women have been sacrificing from the beginning, sacrificing our bodies, our husband, our children, and families, and not much has changed. And then Barbara Westcott, who is a CWN alum said, so powerful. And yes, Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, well over 300% above all other startup groups, while still carrying the weight of the world. It's a lot and exhausting. So, there's several other comments on here, just kind of definitely co-signing all of what's being said about sex trafficking and how we are deemed as belligerent and aggressive rather than passionate and confident. So
Yeah.
that's a good segue to our final subtopic of the Black woman's voice. Oftentimes Black women may speak a soft word initially, but then when not being heard, will raise their voice and be called,
Yeah.
belligerent, aggressive, angry, have an attitude.
Yeah.
And that's really not the case. And not saying that, the Black women are attitude free, but in context, sometimes our voice is not heard.
Mhm.
Right. So when we lift them, it comes off as aggressive, or at least we get labeled as aggressive. And that's not truly the case. So I want to just kind of, and you all have kind of touched on it in the last topic, but spend a little time talking about the voice of the Black woman.
Well, for me, that's what I rely on to help get me through. And so I think about, I read a lot of Audre Lorde, I read a lot of Nikki Giovanni, I read a lot of Shirley Chisholm, I read a lot of unapologetic Black women, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer. I read those and I sometimes listen to their speeches to help me realize and help me understand and just remember that it doesn't matter, because what I do or what I say, there's always going to be someone that perceives me as outspoken or, quote unquote, team too much, as they say. But I have to use my voice. And those women use their voice so that I could speak out. So I just rely on those historical references. And then I think about my own grandmothers. My grandmother, Mildred, we just celebrated her birthday this weekend.
That was my grandma's name.
Yeah. She is unapologetic about who she is. And my late grandmother, Eva, so is she. And so, I think about, that girl trek movement, daughter love. I mean, that was so powerful for me because it just reminded me that we have to lean on those voices. And then we need to continue to speak out. And there's multiple ways of doing it, right? So if you want to be out there on the picket lines, or if you want to be in your blog, or if you just want to call your girlfriends and have this dialogue, that's speaking out. Audre Lorde said, your silence will not protect you.
It will not. That's my favorite quote. It will not protect you.
And so we don't need to be silent. We need to continue to speak.
And I believe, it's my voice is my power. And so if I give that up, I give up my personal agency. I give up my power, and I won't do that. And I think Black women we more than ever, we're understanding that. And so instead of conforming to environments that want us to dumb down, that wants us to shut up and just work or whatever that looks like, we're creating our own. We're creating our own spaces. We're creating our own opportunities. We're employing ourselves so that we can be authentically. I can wear my hair how I want. I can, all of this pressure that we have. Many people are choosing to just get out of it. And I understand. But for those of us that are in academia or, whatever our sphere is or our area, we have to continue to live our truth. And that's, and hold people accountable. That I won't be one of those. Like, you will not talk to me in that way and we won't have a second conversation, or I won't say anything when I see or hear something that is, not correct. And I think for me, I grew up in Liberty City in Miami, very rough. So you wouldn't have survived being quiet. So, and I come from, a single mom who had a big mouth. And so I don't, it's just how I was raised. And so it was and I wasn't raised around a lot of white people. You're in the inner city, so it's, we had a lot of Hispanics and Latinos, but never, so coming here to Tallahassee was just a new kind of, it was new. And especially getting into the workplace and going through PWI for my master's. And so I had to learn how to navigate white spaces. And that was new for me, even though I was from a big city, right? It's like, we don't really, and there was no need for me to go to the white part of town. And so that was exhausting, having to learn how to navigate that. And I never forget being in my graduate classes. And I had a profound experience, and we were like in a clinical group setting. And so we were learning how to do group therapy. But we were in a group, so we were learning how to facilitate, but also taking part in a therapeutic process. And so it was one of the things that will forever shape me. And in that group, it was a couple of Black girls, but mostly, white girls. And we had to I don't know what the conversation was about, but we had to kind of share our truth in some manner. But I never forget one of the white girls who I didn't know, she looked at me and said, I have to be honest that the power of Black women intimidates me. And she was, it was one of those moments where she had her own kind of experience and, kind of moment but I never forget that look in her face, that without that experience, she would have never gave voice to that. And so I think a lot of people are intimidated by the strength that we have, and they are intimidated, white women in particular, because it's not understood. And so I think it's imperative that white women do their own work. Just how we have to do our work, they have to do their own work and undo some of that stuff and some of the views that they have that are not real. And so now because I work in the racial equity space, I'm constantly sitting with white women and having conversations about race. And I love it because I can say, that's not cool. What you said, that was real, that wasn't okay. And I'm going to tell you why, because we've created in my work environment, this kind of open, open environment where we can call it out, but everybody doesn't have that. And so if I can't have that, then I can't work there. Because I know how freeing it is to work with people that don't always get it right, white people that don't always get it right, but they're willing to hear and they're willing to listen. And that makes all of the difference, and I think we need to create, I'm hoping that after this, what we're in right now, that we create more spaces like that. But white people are saying, hey, help me understand. I don't get it, but help me. I'm willing to read a book. I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation. I'm willing to watch a documentary, something, So that's my hope, is that we get there so that they can do their work as we're doing ours.
And see, it's interesting. I grew up with the exact flip side of the experience. I grew up in a predominantly white environment. The white Catholic schools lived on the north side of Chicago. And so my Monday through Friday were predominantly white, but my weekends were Black because I was on the west side with my father and, our family. And so it was very interesting. I realized how much trauma I had being called, things like, oh, you're one of the good Black people, right? And thinking about how much pressure that can put on you. The whole notion of an Oreo, Black on the outside, white on the inside.
I was going to say that. I was going to say you probably called the Oreo.
Yeah, all those things. And it wasn't until I really started digging deep into that whole intersectionality piece, but, this race issue and this gender issue, because, I had to tread very lightly because I didn't want to seem so outspoken that I wasn't going to excel in school, right? Safe Black, exactly. And then even the ways in which you're perceived by how you talk, you speak proper, you talk white. There's so much stuff you have to undo
Yeah.
Just to protect that voice that you're curating as a child. And it's just very challenging. And so I would say to people, in addition to protecting your voice, using your voice, strengthen that voice as well, because your sum total of your lived experiences, they're going to evolve, as mine have. And I remember being really scared to speak out to now you can't be anywhere with me without me saying something. I mean, I call my Black male colleagues out on their sexism. I call my my non-Black family. Hey, watch your privilege. Your privilege is shown. Let's have a conversation about this.
I like the way you said that. Watch your privilege. Your privilege is showing.
Yeah.
It's showing.
Yeah. Or you're so articulate. Yeah. I mean, those kinds of statements, they don't realize the adverse effect they have. And then also, I just had to do the work and get me a good therapist,
Amen.
so that you can unpack all of it. Because when you are experiencing it and then you teach it, you become a repository for all of your students to share their race stories, right, or their gender stories. And so it's a very interesting place to be in. Depending upon what institution you're at, because if you're the only Black one in your department,
you're bearing all that. Yeah.
You are on every committee for every Black student in that department. And then you're taxed in a way. That's an extra tax of work. And so you have to be so mindful of how you navigate that.
And I was just going to also add the importance of teaching our Black girls this very early, because I think a lot of the issues that we have as Black women was, started in our childhood, to where we were not necessarily given. And again, I was, I told you my experience, and I was kind of raised just me and my mom. So I kind of had to speak up, and she encouraged that. But I know so many Black young girls who were, children are seen and not heard, or, they were not raised to really give voice to what they wanted, even when it came to, sexuality and all that kind of stuff. And so we were, taught to be, this is what ladies do. And this, and I think some of that, a lot of that really infiltrated our ability to speak our truth, not just against white people, even in relationships, even in saying what's okay and what's not okay. So I think one of the ways that we can strengthen the voice of Black women is to strengthen the voice of our Black girls. And starting very early, like, no, you don't have to give them a hug. Like, no, you don't have, we teach little girls that we give such as Uncle Joe a hug. That's what you do to adults. And so stuff like that creates this pattern. And so, we have these young girls who no voice. And so I think it's amazing to give, to start very early and to strengthen that. And to really say, no, what do you feel? What do you want to do? Okay, you don't want to do that. That's fine. That's okay. You have that right. And I think a lot of Black girls didn't have that, because our parents did the best they could, with what the tools that they had. But we're in a new place. And I think we have to give our daughters, especially, the strength of, we have to teach them how to do. We have to model it. We have to let them know that it's okay.
Yeah. He always says no is a complete sentence.
Yes, it is.
I'm, working really hard to teach my daughter that. And it's difficult, right? Because as parents, you want children to kind of quote unquote stay in a certain place. But I'm not raising her to do that. I'm raising her to speak out. I'm raising her to say, no, I don't like that. And like I said, no, I don't have to give you a hug. And she's quick to give me the hand. And I kind of appreciate that. Boundaries. That's what we need to do. It's about setting these boundaries. Because we're not getting the support that we need, right, from institutions. So we must set the boundaries ourselves to again, going back to what I said earlier, protect our peace and protect who we are as we navigate through all of this.
Love it. So I'm going to share just a few comments.
Okay.
We got Dan Richardson, who's one of my regular viewers. He said, I love you, Black women, queens, strong mothers, etc. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Kathleen, who also tunes in pretty frequently, she says, amen. We white women need to keep each other accountable and do our own work.
Yes.
Melissa said white women would learn so much if we would only be quiet and listen. Black women have been trying to teach us for so long, and we didn't think we needed to learn.
Yeah.
Sarah Grace said yes to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely agree. Healing is so important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then Dr. Peaches, who's at FAMU, she said, my sister friends and I have decided that we are exhausted from undoing all the learned behaviors we've experienced as the safe Black girls. It's
Yeah.
work indeed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not just in white spaces.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in all spaces,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where you have to push back on that privilege,
Yeah.
that gender privilege,
Yeah.
you know. And right now we're dealing with critical issues as it relates to our young girls and our young trans women of color,
Mm-hmm.
particularly Black trans women. I mean, we're dealing with a lot here, and if we don't get this together, we're only going to see more fatalities. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just the physical murder; it's a spirit murder as well.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So when you can't get yourself together because everything is coming down on you, um, that's an undue burden that your other counterparts may not have to grapple with,
Yeah.
and it's a challenge.
Very, very true. Um, Adrian Stevenson said this is a very freeing conversation.
Hey.
Absolutely beautiful. Glad to hear that because we want to set the captives free.
Set them
So
free.
yes, set them free. So we are at about 1 hour. But if there are any closing remarks that you want to say, anything that you want to say to, I mean, you've already kind of said some of it to the young women and girls, some words of encouragement, as it relates to being a Black woman in America.
I would
Mm.
say keep reading, keep doing things that brings you joy. I've been reading a lot about Black joy as a form of resistance.
Hmm.
Manage your time. You don't have to be on the front lines every day. I think kind of reimagine what your front line is every day, because for me sometimes my front line is keeping my children safe, but another day I might want to go out and march, and I reserve the right to do what I need to do. And
Hmm.
so I would say just keep protecting that peace, and keep exhibiting that Black joy as a form of resistance as best you can. And on the days when you don't feel it, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think we should lift each other up and feel comfortable enough to call and check in with one another, just to say, hey sis, you doing all right? You don't have to be so strong today. And vice versa. Have some reciprocity with that, with one another.
Hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we need one another. Like Black women need good, healthy relationships with other Black women. Like I think, and people think I'm weird when I say this, but I think the sisterhood of Black women is even more vital than our relationships with our husbands.
Mm.
And the men in our families. Because the truth be told, a lot of our girlfriend relationships last longer than some of our marriages. And so she'll be there at your wedding, and she'll be there when you sign your divorce documents if it don't work out, And so I think that we have to cultivate and protect the sanctity that is sisterhood among Black women. That's the source of joy, to be able, you can be fully yourself. And I think that is important. Also, I think one of the, a huge thing is we have to find our identity, like who we really are. We have to, that's a part of the work that I think has to be done very, as early as possible, is to truly find out who we are. And for me, that comes from, my spirituality and my belief in God. But whatever that is for someone, find out your true identity, because when you find out who you truly are, then you won't be a slave to false identities.
Yeah.
And whatever that is. And so I think that is important. That is important to know that. I felt like for me as a Black woman, that is one of the things that I wish I knew earlier. you know, because I realized like that's not really who I am. Like my identity and my joy does not come, or is not, I won't say my joy, but my identity is not in what I do. My identity is not in being somebody's wife. I love, that's a part of who my life, but that's not my identity, because if that's taken away, I'm still Ghia.
Right.
You know, I am a mother, but that's not that, you know, it's not the sum of who I am. That's not my identity, you know.
You still have to be whole.
Yeah.
Say that again, Kristal.
I said, you still have to be whole.
You still have to be whole. But sometimes we teach girls and we teach women that is the sum of who you are. Like, be a wife, be a mom, and that'll. And so you have single women who are depressed because they don't have that, right? Because their identity is now displaced in this idea of, I don't have a husband, so I must not be whole. I don't have children, so yeah. And so we teach that, and that is damaging. So we have to find our identity. I would say in God, but whoever you deem to be, you got to know that you are brought with such a beautiful price, that outside of all of this, outside of degrees, outside of education, all of that, who is Ghia? If you strip me down to the bare, the bare necessity, whoever, many of us don't know.
Right.
Many of us don't know. If you take away my titles, if you take away how much money I make, if you take away my marriage, what do I have?
Right.
And I think we have to do that work and find our identity. And that way, once we know who we are, then that voice will emerge in such a way. And we won't be shaken, because I know who I am. Right. I know that if this job is taken away, I know who I am,
Right.
And so I think identity is huge. Sisterhood is huge. Self-care is huge. I cannot express that enough. You got to take care of yourself. And don't feel bad about it. That's another misconception, that because we are mothers, if you're a mother, you got children, that everything now becomes about the kids and you feel bad about going to get you a manicure. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
If you have to do that, whatever it takes, read a good book, get you a nice glass of wine, whatever it is that it takes for you to feel good. We have to prioritize ourselves. Go ahead.
Especially in these times. I mean, it's just so much trauma. We're constantly rewatching, right, the violence. So you're absolutely right, Ghia. You have to find that peace.
Yes.
Yeah, and not apologize for it. I put my stuff in my schedule, and if somebody tries to schedule a meeting when I know I have a massage schedule, I am unavailable, because that meeting is not going to change the trajectory of anything, but my self-care could.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be steadfast in really protecting your time.
Absolutely. It is so important.
So I hope the ladies are hearing this, because, I know I am really guilty of putting myself on the back burner. It's time for me to meditate. I'll get to it in 5 minutes. I'll get to it in 20 minutes, and it never comes.
Yeah.
So, definitely putting your self-care first is a priority, scheduling it, and don't shortchange yourself.
Yeah.
Definitely agree with that. So all of this has been good, ladies. Really, really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell the folks how they can, connect with you, reach out to you.
Sure. So I am pretty busy on social media, so I'm not quiet even on social media. So if you want to follow me personally, you can find me at Ghia Kelly. Not too many GHIAs around there, so you'll find me fairly easy. And then for ministry, because again, like I said, I have a whole nother ministry that focuses on empowerment, identity. As you can see, I'm very very much passionate about that. You can find me at The Gift of Truth, The Gift of Truth on social media, and then I also have a website, thegiftoftruth.com, for more information on just what I do. All that good stuff. So
good, dear.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I have the same handle for everything. Kris Clemons, PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I'd love to connect with people and, have great conversations.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I appreciate it. I'm getting comments from folks. Good job, Ghia. Uh, excellent dialogue.
Oh.
Let's see. So someone is giving Crystal the beauty face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Sarah Thurman.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. This conversation has been great.
Oh, Alice.
By Alice. Somebody put the website in there, so that's great.
That's my bestie. See, that's how girlfriends do.
All right. She said this was awesome. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, ladies. Dr. Kelly, to giving you the fist. That's Talithia's favorite little thing, fist.
I'm working on my doctorate, so she's speaking it. Go for it.
Okay, all right.
I need the encouragement.
Too, Dr. Kelly. All right. Great conversation. Thank you. Shayla, that's my sister down in Miami, my biological sister, tuning in. And then Sarah Gray said, could you provide the books about joy as resistance?
That was very good.
Okay. So I'm sure there's tons of books out, but I've just been following the hashtag on Instagram, Black Joy with Resistance. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he did an expose in a magazine about it.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just follow the hashtag on Instagram.
Okay.
And then also, you can read any Audre Lorde, Nikki Giovanni. You can read any of those sisters. Brittany Cooper's Eloquent Rage. There's all kinds of stuff out right now that talks about just kind of Black feminism in terms of looking at your Black feminism and Black women's superpowers.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much for this conversation. You ladies were great. Bravo.
Thank you.
Joy as resistance. That's powerful. Yeah, I had not heard of that concept before. And then my young brother Cameron Montgomery said, God bless you, ladies. I truly took a lot away from this. So
good.
Awesome. So before we close out, I definitely want to invite folks to check out the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel. Subscribing is supporting, and we need all the support we can get. We are here every Monday and Wednesday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Man Up Monday and What Women Want Wednesday. And we have Single in the City coming up, which is myself, Jokeetra Horn, and Nick Rain. So this week's broadcast will be on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. So always a interesting dialogue with the Single in the City, where kings meet queens crew. So definitely want to give them a shout out. So Juneteenth is this Friday. Woo. Yes. I've never seen Juneteenth recognized so much in all my life.
We own it this year.
I got an email from my bank, my mortgage company, saying they're gonna close at 2 p.m. on Friday, and they're gonna give their employees a day off so they can celebrate Juneteenth.
Come on, that's
what Virginia did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, Juneteenth, celebrate, in some way, some form, some fashion. Several things going on here in Tallahassee on that day and throughout the weekend. Father's Day is this weekend, so definitely want to give love to the fathers and the surrogate fathers out there. Thank you for, being there, showing up for the children. And yeah, I think that's it. So y'all reach out to Ghia and Kristal on their social. Thank you again for being my guest and covering these topics. It was phenomenal.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.